who would want this out? Like, who wants this with the draft right around the corner? I mean, we're almost 8 days away, a little less than 8 official days away from the first round, which doesn't impact Trey Lance and the trade value. But, like, who would want it out that sniffing around? Because it's obvious he'd be available, right? You could call, like, for the right price, he could definitely be had. But who wants it out that, like, people are kind of interested? Doesn't it make sense that the 49ers would kind of want, like, okay, a couple teams kind of vying for his services or willing to take a flyer on this guy, right? Because to me, that's my number one take. 49ers want it out. Trey Lance has some people sniffing around.
Right. And, all right, who else would want it out? His agent, maybe, right? There's a world where his agent would want it out. Like, we've not gotten a fair shake here. I would love for him to just go play for D'Amico. I would love for him to go play for Rand Carthen. I would love for him to go play for the Colts, whatever, right? That could be another scenario.
It does feel, though, with agents when it comes to quarterbacks, and maybe he's not good enough to do something like this, of like, can you trade my client so he can go start somewhere? Is he in a weird spot where you can't really pull that card?
I don't think he could, but I want to get every possible scenario on the table because I'm with you. Like, it feels first and foremost like the Niners would want it out. From a timing standpoint, why would they want it out now? If we said the who, what the why? Well, the draft is coming up next week. The other piece of timing that I think is interesting is what happened this week already. Brock Purdy showed up on Monday to the 49ers facility, right? Like, if you were considering trading Trey Lance, one thing you'd have to feel good about is Brock Purdy's health.
Well, so is Purdy playing rope-a-dope when he said on his Buffalo Wild Wings call that he could be out for the season?
I think Purdy's just a humble guy who doesn't want to take it any more than one day at a time, John.
Okay.
He'll be slanging burgers like he never got hurt.
What was that Kyle, in the ChatGPT AI thing, talking for Purdy?
Maybe it was Kyle just telling him what to say. But I don't think if it's the Niners, then to me it's not an accident that it happens after they get a look at Brock. They go, all right, things are okay with Brock. Are we comfortable if we get an offer trading this guy next week? We'll get to the offer in a second, but let's just start to your point. Are we comfortable trading him? And what happened a year ago when Deebo Samuel allegedly, or didn't, told Jeff Darlington, I want to be traded? The Niners repeatedly were like, we're not trading him.
Yeah.
He is not getting traded. That's not, we haven't, there's been no counter report from Peter King that says the Niners aren't interested here.
Remember what was the trade? It was like the Niners had to give a second, and the Jets would have been willing to give pick 10 for Deebo. It actually wasn't a great trade.
Oh, that's right.
The Niners were like, fuck you.
That's right.
But I would say this. If we assume it's the Niners, which if you put the piece of the puzzle together based on just some evidence that's out there, I think it's fair to assume that Trey's in major trouble. Trey's clock on this team is ticking, and it's ticking fast. And whether that, it takes two to tango. And even if Purdy based on the couple days you've been around him now, you feel good about where he's headed. You're not just going to give Trey Lance away. I think that would be pretty stunning, right? If I told you that on draft night they traded Trey Lance for like a 5th and a conditional pick or something, right? So if he's good, maybe you get like a 3rd the following year. I just don't see that happening. But I'm starting to lean that like maybe they don't believe in him, because there have been people, and I think Grant has been one of the most consistent people around the 49ers that has just been adamant. Like, they don't believe in Trey. Like, they're telling you everything they need to know. Like, they don't even like this guy. And listen, from a football perspective, like a scout's perspective or a coach's perspective, welcome to the league. Like, welcome to the NFL, right? No one knew George Kittle. Like, you think the 49ers thought they had some fucking star tight end when they drafted George Kittle? And then a year and a half later, they knew they had a stud. Like, isn't that the way sports kind of works, but specifically football? Because so many young guys play right away, and you just kind of know. You're like, God, this guy's good. We're into this, right? And things change, and it can go the other way fast with poor play or injuries or whatever. Like, the Eagles were like, yeah, we're interested. Let's take this guy in the second round. A year later, it was like a work in progress. A year later, they give the guy $175 million. Like, I would say the NFL of the 3 major sports, baseball takes the longest. Basketball can kind of ebb and flow because guys are so young. I think football kind of plays itself out the fastest, right? You're good, There are rare stories of like, it took Devontae Adams a couple years, and then by his fourth year, he was a superstar. Like, that's kind of the outlier situation. Most guys like TJ Watt, Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, you just go around the league. Look at the stud players, just even good quarterbacks. By the second year, Jalen Hurts, like, this guy's getting a couple years starting for the Eagles. It was clear. Now, it might not go, no one thought it was going to be as good as it was this year, but like 2 years ago, it was like, this guy's going to get some time now, right? And that's the thing with Trey. However you want to criticize like the Niners, the offense, Trey's limited playing time, whatever, we're here. And when you're here, just around the NFL, even whether it was the Niners, whether it was the Vikings, whether it was Tampa, you know where this usually goes. And it usually goes away from just riding, especially when you're good, right?
Well, that's the classic part of this, right? The it's not you, it's me part of it for the 49ers. It's possible, because there's always these debates. Do they hate him? Do they love him? Why have they turned on him? All that stuff. Let's just come up with even a simpler scenario, which is this, which John Lynch has said. Yeah, what we all have said. What's obvious to everybody. Trey Lance needs to play if he's going to have a chance to get better, right? And if the Niners think Brock Purdy is better than him, which the evidence
they do
shows
right.
Overwhelmingly he is, right? At this point, he's the better option.
And they've admitted that they think that too. Like,
that's right.
We've seen it, and they've said we think that.
That's right. So if they're looking at it like, okay, how could Trey Lance be good? Well, he's going to have to play. Well, is Trey Lance going to play here? No, he's not going to play here. So what do we do? Before you even say we love him, we don't love him, he's not what we thought he was, blah, 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 blah. It could be as simple as, yeah, we like him, but we don't like him enough to play him over this other guy who we like more. And if he's not going to play here, and his fifth-year option is not something we're going to pick up after the season, if we no longer view him like he could be the future quarterback, then his value will never be as high as it is today. It will only decline the less he plays for us. Now, we talked about it, like, what is it about this now that changes the perspective of holding on to him until October? Because that's something we've talked about. It like, to me, it is risky, and we'll get into compensation. The reason I wouldn't trade him for a fourth-round pick, in part, is I might need him, whether I think he's the quarterback of the future or not, I might need him to play football games for me this year. That's what the 49ers' recent quarterback history tells us. But they're also, they take risks. Like, they try to walk this fine line between disaster and NFC championship games. And if they trade him, like next week, they've got one healthy quarterback on their roster, and he's never played a snap for them.
Yeah, I just think anytime that you're trying to balance a long-term and short-term investment, there's an unknown, right? Like, I own Tilray, this weed stock, because I thought weed was going to be the future. It's not. It's struggled. It's a Canadian company. It's a disaster.
Well,
I'm in for about $60,000, but when you look at my brokerage account, it shows that it was like $18,000. So I'm minus,
This is a savings account.
a lot of money. So right now, if you put a gun to my head and I had to have the $18,000, I would have to sell it and I would lose whatever, $38,000. Right? But who knows? Maybe I write it out and I get it all back and I break even. What if it quadruples? I don't know. But like, there's just unknown. But that's part of, like, you can ride this thing out and it can get worse. Because if he gets beat out for Sam Darnold, that value of what it is today, which is still level some hope, some optimism, the future, immediately gets cut in half. So there's always a balance to playing that, and that's just part of life. And I don't care whether you're investing in stocks, whether you're drafting football players, whether you invest in fucking real estate. Like, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. And you don't really know till certain things play out. And part of it is, I think there's an element, luck is probably the wrong way to put it, but like, if they have an offer on the table right now, let's just say for a fourth-round pick, they might look back in a year at the trade deadline like, we should have taken that, right? And it's fair to go like, I'm going to ride this out and see where it goes. Because ultimately, like, I don't need the money right now. They don't need the pick. If they did not have a pick in the draft, you'd be like, yeah, I'd probably trade Trey Lance. See if you can get like a third and a fourth, a fourth and a fifth, or whatever, right? But they do have some picks.
Healthy right now, it might be.
If Brock was healthy, I would say he'd probably get traded during the draft. But I also think that gets back to what I just said is, let's use the Minnesota example. Clearly that one specifically was centered around and would have to be some Cousins for Trey Lance, right? You take Cousins the contract. We'll take this flyer for a couple years on Trey Lance, and we'll pivot off it because Trey Lance wouldn't beat out Kirk Cousins. Absolutely zero shot. So you wouldn't trade him to just sit.
And then pick up and not pick up or pick up his fifth-year option without having seen him play.
And they'd already talked about, like, this is probably Kirk Cousins last year on the Vikings.
Right.
And there were rumors that, like, the 49ers sniffed around Kirk Cousins. So it kind of all makes sense. And I think with the 49ers, once they got some clarity on Brock Purdy, they're like, no, let's just – because part of taking Cousins back is he does make a lot of money. It's a pretty complicated transaction. But I do think there are other teams that would fall under the umbrella of, like, should they be interested in this guy for cheap? Because I don't think – if you and I ran a team and we were just quarterbackless, wouldn't it be great? Like, could we get this guy for like a 5th-round pick and just see? Why not? And then in worst case scenario, we don't pick his 5th-year option and we just didn't even give up that much besides some money that we have to spend. In baseball, it's like, this owner's pocketing all the change, even though like the A's don't make any money, but you know what I mean. In football, I always like, this owner just not want to spend the money. No, they actually pay all the players. Like, all the team's salary cap, like no one's salary caps are like $95 million. Right. You just kind of pick and choose, like, is this worth investing in? Should we pay Trey Lance $8 million of a salary? Whatever. And yeah.
Yeah, so the Cowboys and the Bucks and the Colts, it's all the same.
Yeah. So
sorry, finish that thought.
Yeah, I mean, that's and maybe the 49ers, maybe Kyle believes that I don't think that he can beat out Sam Darnold, so let's pivot now before that ends up happening and his value diminishes.
Yeah, or it's about the same. Maybe it's that simple. They're kind of the same. So if we could get a 2nd-round pick for Trey, let's do it. I mean, it could be that simple. Like, not necessarily he's going to lose the job to Darnold. Just, I'm fine with either one of them. So if one of them has value, let's take advantage of that value. The other reason to think it's the Niners that want it out there is when you go back and look at the verbiage of Rap Sheet's report, the conversation have been the result of SF fielding the calls, not making them. Okay. Who would care about that piece of information?
Trey Lance.
Yeah, the Niners would care about that piece of information. If you were the Bucks and Jason Light and you leaked that news to Rap Sheet, you wouldn't be like, now let me make it very clear. I was the one that called them. You wouldn't care. The Colts don't care. D'Amico doesn't care. Rand Carthen doesn't care to make the point. Like, just to be clear, I'm the one calling them. Like,
Ian, this is how I want you to sculpt the tweet, okay? Yeah, they've been calling us. Even when we were on vacation, it's like, we like this guy. We're not even interested. Stop calling us. We got to listen because that's our job, but it wasn't our goal. It's like, yeah guys, we get it.
I put my phone away during family time. I only answered because they called me.
I don't blame them. Like, sometimes you miss. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. It's football. The best part about this sport is you can pivot fast. The best part about the 49ers situation, this historic haul that they gave away, in a weird way, has not had negative ramifications when it easily could have. Could have been devastating to trade all that.
Worse off if they'd done it and traded Mac Jones and drafted Mac Jones right now? Would they be in a worse situation right now?
Well, yeah, because I think he'd be good enough for like them to keep riding it through it,
But he'd be bad enough that we'd be like, you didn't even take a swing here. You just got a guy that you could have got at the end of the draft.
Be a lot more negativity. You traded all that for that guy.
Yeah.
I think there'd be a lot more negativity surrounding the whole situation. There was a lot of vitriol when it was just like, is this really going to happen? Like fans, I mean, part of Mac is right. He plays at the biggest, at the time, they were definitely the premier program. He won the Natty. It was people had watched him play. You're like, they're going to draft this guy?
Right.
It wasn't like some unknown. Because who knows? Maybe people would have been like, you're drafting this guy with Trey, but no one had seen him. And I do think there is a major difference. I mean, there is. Of just fucking pulling up some YouTube highlights and just, 4 out of the 12 weeks of the season, like, yeah, I watched this guy play a bunch. This guy stinks, or this guy's awesome, right?
Well, you can't do the press conference like the perfect. What you're looking for is Mahomes, Josh Allen, legs, arms, mobility, and then 4 days later draft Mac Jones, 3rd overall, right?